Hey there boys, this is going to be a video about shoot to loot in general. It's a perk that I think a lot of people kind of gloss over, but it is really one of the just greatest perks in the game, and a lot of people just don't really understand why, so we're going to go ahead and go over that now. And the first reason is really just going to be because it's convenient. You don't have to walk all the way over to an ammo brick you spawn, especially since ammo bricks that you spawn yourself spawn out of enemies, and you typically have to walk over to them, and that's just too much effort. But on a little bit more of a serious practical note, it also keeps you out of danger in harder content where you can't run up and get ammo from bricks in a crowd of enemies you just killed because they're actually dangerous. So this is great in something like GMs, and it's definitely the best perk in the game for a scout rifle in GMs especially. The other times that I think that this really becomes a truly practical and not just convenient perk is on very large maps, like doing Caretaker in VOW, where the ammo bricks can be super far away and you'd have to spend like an entire 30 seconds walking over to bricks on the outside if you don't ever go over there before going up to the next floor, and it really just saves a ton of time, and it's really convenient, and it can keep you safe too, so it's just great as utility. And on that topic, shoot to loot again is a utility perk, and fortunately it comes on a lot of weapons that are very compatible towards utility perks. In general, some weapons just need to have a damage and a reload perk in order to be good. This is going to be most primaries, pretty much every DPS weapon. However, there are a lot of weapons like trace rifles or primaries that have frenzy, which either have these covered or have good enough base damage to just be able to spec into utility. If you're not familiar with what utility is, it's essentially a convenience perk or a helpful perk that's not directly related to your damage or your reload. Some great examples of this would include, of course, Unrelenting, or Heal Clip now, Shoot to Loot obviously, and Attrition Orbs. While some of these perks are just weak, like Heal Clip and Attrition Orbs, they could still be somewhat useful when you already have your damage and reload covered if there's no better utility perk in the slot. However, you might be better off just using a better weapon with those two examples. So next up is going to be a even more practical point, and that is that Shoot to Loot reloads your weapons. That's right, Shoot to Loot reloads itself whenever you shoot a brick, and it also reloads all your other weapons, including ammo types that you didn't pick up. So for example, if you shoot a heavy brick with the shoot to loot weapon, it will reload your special weapon if it's not reloaded, and vice versa. Now again, this is very convenient, but it's also a big deal in DPS actually if you have to do damage after dumping all of your reserves, especially with something like a rocket launcher, which generally struggles with reload. If you've ever watched lowmans or speedruns, you'll see that very often they will dump out all of the reserves of their rocket launcher, and then they'll start shoot to looting all of the ammo bricks around the area to shoot even more rockets off. And while this itself is great, there's even an interesting trick using overflow on another weapon, which actually gives you infinite reloads, and it makes for a hilarious party trick. Check this out. And while this goes on in the background, I did want to quickly thank everybody who's been watching these videos. It means the world to me. We got a ton of support last video, and we're actually about to hit 1,500 subscribers. I would love to see us hit that before the end of the year, so if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, like, comment, all that, and share me with your friends if you think that they could learn something from my videos. We'll go ahead and leave this in the background, like some high quality Subway Surfers gameplay for you TikTok viewers out there who have no attention span. Now, why don't we go ahead and find an actual use case for this, which is of course going to be spamming rockets without a reload perk on your rocket launcher. That's pretty cool, huh? So now that we understand the sort of raw power of this perk and how, remember, this is one perk on your legendary weapon that has all of this amazing power, and I want to talk about the quirks and weirdnesses with the perk, because there's actually a ton of different interactions with things like splash or just spamming bullets, just things like that, so I wanted to talk about them a little bit. And this will also sort of tie into what kind of weapons you should be using with shoot to loot, because this is a little bit of a specific case where shoot to loot isn't good on every weapon, especially weapons that don't have access to something like frenzy to sort of fix the whole needing reload and damage perks options. However, this also just doesn't matter on some weapons like, for example, a trace rifle. We currently have one obtainable trace rifle, and the guttural for it would be shoot to loot with Volt Shot, mainly just because Volt Shot gives splash damage to something that otherwise only has good sort of single add damage, and it combos together very nicely. However, on something like an SMG, you really want to pair it with Frenzy instead of Volt Shot, just because you're not going to have a super good reload stat like you do on the Trace Rifle, especially since it's an Omelon Trace Rifle, which basically just gives it more free reload. but also because SMG damage just isn't amazing, and you really want to have a damage perk to actually just make it kill things quick enough to feel good. So aside from SMGs and trace rifles, I highly recommend it on specifically explosive payload scout rifles, and we actually have a lot of different options, my big two being the Staccato and the Briar's Love now. As far as other options, especially for a broader range of content, I'm going to recommend either an SMG or the Trace Rifle Path of Least Resistance, or if you still have one, of course, the Dare's Trace Rifle also, however that's not obtainable anymore. Currently, we have the Ikelos SMG, the Subjunctive from the season, and the Parabellum World Drop, so anybody can get an SMG with Shoot to Loot now, and they are very good. Parabellum and Ikelos SMG can both pair with Frenzy with Shoot to Loot, and it makes for an absolutely great primary weapon. Subjunctive unfortunately doesn't have access to Frenzy in the final tree, so I would put it a level lower than the other two SMGs. However, I actually think Attrition Orbs is pretty good on the Subjunctive in specific, and before you crucify me, there's a few good reasons for that. Now, the first one being, well, there's no better perks in the tree. But otherwise, I think that it's actually pretty good on this SMG. First of all, the origin trait on the Subjunctive actually lets you sort of have a pseudo overflow effect, which is really nice because whenever you have a lot of stacks of the origin trait, you'll actually be able to trigger multiple orbs off of a single magazine. The other big thing with SMGs is that since the magazine is so small on SMGs, and the way that Attrition Orbs is triggered is based on the percent of your magazine that you're using, you're able to go through a large amount of your magazine very quickly, which actually makes the Attrition Orbs spawn very frequently. It's the same logic that makes Target Lock so overpowered on SMGs in the Crucible right now. So on the topic of the sort of quirks that Shoot to Loot has, essentially any sort of splash that your weapon has is able to pick up the ammo if it hits it. So for example, Explosive Payload mixed with Shoot to Loot is an absolutely amazing combo because you just kind of have to shoot sort of near the ammo, and that's what you really want from this. You want it to be mindless and easy to pick up the ammo, because you don't want to have to put too much thought into something like this because it's sort of meant to be a side thing while you're doing other things, and it's meant to be something that you can do quicker than just reloading your gun manually. So obviously you need something that can consistently and quickly hit the ammo. And not using the right Shoot to Loot weapons is probably the main reason that people aren't a huge fan of the perk overall. I know that obviously the higher end players like the endgame players and the speedrunners and the low manners, they all absolutely love Shoot to Loot, but I really think it's something very underutilized by the casual crowd. Even outside of its very powerful and sort of intense uses, it's still just so good for convenience, and you really don't need anything else in the slot that it's there on the weapons that it's good on. For example, the only real competition that Shoot to Loot has as far as being a utility perk is going to be something like either Slice, Unrelenting, or Heal Clip, and pretty much Slice is the only one that I would really consider to be good there, just because Unrelenting obviously just gives you healing, and you can get healing off of any good build. Realistically, any good build you have is going to be providing you healing. And while Slice is still pretty useful, mainly because it can apply this debuff that makes the enemy deal less damage, and it is one of the only ways to apply it to an enemy who has an immune shield and can't be damaged, I still think that that use case is only going to be there in super hard content where that enemy is actually a threat and could sort of get through your healing. That, and also all the weapons that have Slice don't have Shoot to Loot, so they're not actually in any competition right now. But of course, I'm sort of setting this up as if they could be in the future. And that's going to be the video. I hope you learned something new from this video, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, leave a comment below with your thoughts, and also, if you have any other ideas for what you think I should do in the future, let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.